Welcome to your inspirational astrology horoscope for, I can't believe it, but we're on Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. I'm astrologer Dave Palmer, the Leo King, here to illuminate the collective consciousness. Well, hopefully you are a member of High Vibe TV. If you are not, make sure that you join now. We have awesome different tiers. We have High Vibe just with the traditional High Vibe that there's been, but there's now that premium subscription where you can get access to all my schools that I've ever done over all these years. Plus, every week I teach 2 hours, whether I'm doing a actual school, like right now I'm in Saturn Masterclass, or in the future, if I'm not doing a school, it's coaching and teaching every week. We got our own private room on the apps or the website. Go to highvibe.tv, make sure you subscribe. But also, special events that I do are part of that new subscription as well. Or you can just purchase it, like Retrograde City that I just did, all about the gnarliest moment we are all going through that literally is being kicked off right now as we're speaking, especially with this full moon in Pisces, but more intensely when Venus stations direct and Jupiter stations retrograde. I cover this all the way through these eclipses and how this is the world that we once knew and how it's gone. And this is definitely going to be your survival guide through it. Make sure that you purchase it by going to highvibe.tv, clicking on Retrograde City, or becoming a member of highvibe.tv on the premium tier to watch it and all the other awesome forms of content. Or you could be the basic member and get the daily horoscopes and all the shows that we do here. It just doesn't come with all the schools or the special events. Well, it's good to be with you all. Of course, I wasn't able to put up the new moon in Leo horoscope because Sophia and my daughter was born Aurora on that day. So it's good to be back with you all. Hope everybody is doing wonderful out there, especially that we are in 6 planets retrograde and we are about to go through a very rare moment of, is it really 6, 5, and then 6 within 13 hours? Or is it more 6 stationary, 6, 6? What do I mean by that? We're about to see the biggest, well, chain of events happen in our lives. Especially, I've said, coming into all this over a month ago with the Venus retrograde in Leo for the first time in our lives, that this was us hitting critical mass. This is the week, and this full moon is setting us up for this weekend where events that will be continuously played on the news and so forth are coming. Whether you want to call that black swan events, change in power in the world. Very, very auspicious time to say the least. Let's take a look at this full moon horoscope. So we are having a full moon in Pisces, and it is with Saturn, Neptune. Remember that Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces. Neptune's the ruler of Pisces. But the big deal here, of course, is let's not forget that the last time Saturn and Neptune were in Pisces together was back in 1523, 500 years ago. Secondly, when Saturn made its ingress into Pisces, it was when the sun was already in Pisces. So the sun conjuncted Saturn in Aquarius right before the beginning of March. And so we had a whole 30 days of sun and Saturn. Then sun went into Pisces, Saturn was still in Aquarius, and then halfway through Pisces season, Saturn ingressed into Pisces. So we saw an extended, more than normal sun and Saturn in the same sign, right? Not only in Aquarius, but in Pisces. So this is now the moon's first time to be full and to be with that Saturn. Now, on Deep Astrology on High Vibe, I go way deeper but I'll just give you it on basic form that in many ways, what are we feeling on this one? We're in 6 planets retrograde to start off with first. We have Mercury retrograde. We have Venus stationing right now. It's not technically stationed, but it's stopping, and it's going to come direct on September 3rd, Sunday. We are in Jupiter that's stationing. That's going to retrograde on Monday morning, just 12 and a half hours after Venus stations direct. Saturn retrograde, Uranus retrograde, Neptune retrograde, Pluto retrograde. We are in massive retrogrades, okay? And we have to remember that the only planet that is moving forward is Mars, and it's in Libra, and it just went south in declination. So the day before this full moon, we were at 0, 0, 0 south, and now that it's at 2 degrees, once it hits the end of that 1 58 about and comes to 2. Boom, we go into south declination and we are here now. So things are going south. Mars is with the south node. Mars is also, unfortunately, in its detriment. So really, where is the only planet that's actually moving at its normal speed? You can't count the sun and the moon. It's Mars, and it's unfortunately the dispositor of the north node that happens to be with the exoplanet Eris, the goddess of war and strife. This is also a very extreme time because Chiron is in Aries with the north node. And so there's sacrifices in the world that are about to take place. There is also no aspects to the sun right now except for this full moon. So this is weird. If you look at the sun's not aspecting any other planetary body except for moon. So this full moon is the only thing that this sun is aspecting, which is really weird. Not even any of the weird aspects, and there's a lot of weird aspects. There's tons of sesquiquadrats, quincunxes. There's even some quintiles in here. There's a lot of odd, weird angles. And with 6 planets retrograde, this could feel like dire straits. Full moon, Saturn. Remember, this is the second full moon of August. And both full moons, the last one, of course, being in Aquarius, was with Venus retrograde in Leo. This one, Venus retrograde in Leo. So this is our first Venus retrograde in Leo in our lives since the 1800s, especially the 1840s was the last one. And the first one that started it was in 1772. That was at the exact same degree of 28 degrees Leo and stopped and stationed direct at 12 degrees. The time before that was in 1521 during the Spanish conquistadors that took over all of the Mayan, everybody that was Mayan, and turned it eventually into the New Spain. Then 1270 and the 8th and the last crusade of Henry IV, or sorry, not Henry IV. No, was it Henry IV? Of France that did his last crusade, died the day and a half before Venus stationed direct. 251 years. All of them had Uranus and Taurus retrograde that just retrograded right before this full moon in Pisces, this dire straits. I'm calling this dire straits. Venus and Jupiter, the two benefics, are in square. They're both stopped. Everything else is stopped except Mars. And Mars, the planet of war, the planet of action, and the north node being with Eris. I didn't have it on here for some reason, but it's here at 25 degrees. I'm not here to use this full moon or any of these transits here to scare you, but to like awake you to what's happening. You know, this is where we can feel very confused in Pisces. Neptune's the ruler here. Neptune also is in sesquiquadrate to Venus that's stationing. And ironically enough, the planetary north node of Neptune happens to be at 12 degrees and 11 degrees. It bounces between there of Leo. So, you know, you can't be fantasizing about, I just hope it's all going to go okay. Like, this is also a time to where at the same time, you know, you have to learn to like let go. But really, this is about your spiritual guidance and also all of these huge past elements that it's been 500 years since a full moon in Pisces was with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And Neptune's the ruler of Pisces, and it's making this weird sesquiquadrate to Venus that's stationing. That's the south node dispositor, which the more you look at it, this astrology just keeps getting weirder and weirder with this Mars-Venus aspect that they've been trying to come together, and they're in a weird septile. There's some really weird stuff going on here, okay? And I got to be real with you. This is a full moon to where we can feel that there is things from Pisces world. And what is Pisces world? Well, Neptune, the ruler of it, which looks like an antenna, literally, is for the fortress, the sun. It is the outpost. And it feels what's coming in. It's the widest part of the zodiac as well. And so what are we feeling? Well, we're feeling with Saturn. There's energies that are trying to come in to this reality during this rare and auspicious time when everything is in retrograde. The angles are alien to say the least. And about to impose spells and all the things that you've seen since 2020. But this is where that chain of event hits after this full moon, especially come this weekend when Venus stations direct and Jupiter stations retrograde. And I got to just remind people here that this is very odd because this is a time to where it feels like you can't even say no man's land, because really we've never been here before and our collective has never been here before. I did the research of every same Venus transit. So 1772, 2023, but then 1521 and 1270. Once you go past that to a 251 years past that, that's where Venus actually, without 11 degrees coming direct. So it's really interesting for me to see that, it's the same thing dealing with the church, religions, and their idea of conquest and taking over. This is also where Christian, and I hate to say it, but Christians go and think that they can change the world by killing other indigenous people or other things like that. This is also the time of inquisitions. This is also the time that's going to be bringing up about heretics, astrologers, or people like Martin Luther who say things that are not with the norm, or at that time the norm would be the Catholic Church. Now it's our governments and all these things. And this is going to bring up this very weird zone that we've been in, because the moon, as it's coming into apex, it's going to cross Saturn and leave that Pluto-Saturn gap that we've been seeing, that conjunction since 2020, and then enter into this new realm of this Saturn-Neptune. And really, the Saturn-Neptune realm deals with where people start losing it with religions. People start losing it in a lot of ways, and especially the oppositions here to all this Virgo, with Mercury retrograde in Virgo, the sun here in Virgo. Even Lilith is on Regulus in Virgo. We're seeing Lilith come back and forth between Leo and Virgo now. But I got to say that this is one to where it's like the fix is not the way. There's nothing that needs to be fixed, but people are going to be over-strangulating themselves trying to fix things. This is definitely a time about, one, being very reflective. It's all these retrogrades. But a lot of it is hanging on the fence about what to do. I would especially say, since Jupiter and Uranus, with Uranus now that just stationed retrograde on Monday, here's Wednesday, full moon in Pisces, and here's Jupiter that's about to station retrograde. And these two planets deal with the lesson that all of us as a collective is going to go through. The last time Jupiter and Uranus were in Taurus was World War II and the buildups of it. This is also the exact same Uranus transit that when September 1st, 1939 hit and World War II's official date was the same. On August 28th, Uranus retrograded at 23 degrees into 22 degrees of Taurus. Same pattern, same thing. This is my call that I've made on many occasions about warning you that a fake plague that is going to be used to control you and shattered reality, that they're going to make something and they're going to force you to take it, and it's going to be worse for you than better. Will you hear me now? That the black swan events, from financial to war to having this new weird conquest with Mars in the south node of to bring peace, are not going to be as friendly or as good as you think. And there's a lot of very malice energy coming in, and it's about us all being the light workers. It's about us being very clear in not basing people off religion. That's it. Believe it or not, that's the subconscious hidden element of what happened 500 years ago. So this is the first full moon to bring up, like the moon card in tarot, that Saturn and Neptune energy that's in Pisces. Right? And the heretics and the people who didn't follow the way, well, that goes into whether it's COVID policy today, medical policy, conspiracies, all that. You're a heretic now. You're not going with what MSNBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox News says. So you're crazy. You're a heretic. Well, guess what? What you went through for the last 3.5 years was the just basic test. Basic. The lobby. You know, unfortunately, and I'm praying for everybody in the South right now from Florida, but if you look up the history, when the same 8th conquest of that big, huge moment of going to the Crusades again to try and take over the Holy Land, it was bad weather, it was too hot, there was dysentery, It was horrible. And the same Venus retrograde we're in now. And I'm telling you that, if you thought Maui was crazy, weird events here this whole week are going to happen in the South with what's happening with this storm. And I don't wish that upon anybody. I'm just saying that the astrology here, especially Florida being a state that is all about Jupiter, Neptune energy, right? And we're in a full moon in Pisces. And we're also in a full moon in Pisces that's stirring up all this mutable energy. And Mercury's retrograde in Virgo. Neptune, the ruler, is retrograde. We also have this divisiveness going on with Neptune here at 26 Pisces. Go look at the beginnings of the Civil War. Yeah, Neptune, Aries, but retrograde back Pisces. Beginning of 1861, Neptune 26 Pisces. That was direct, but we are at Civil War degrees now with Neptune. And of course, with Uranus, we're at where all the crazy separatism was happening in the battles. So really, we're coming into massive clashes in the community that we're all in. Is very important to pay attention to people who are not buying the 99% viewpoint that is on television, where the 99% of us know it's not true. Hopefully. Unfortunately, there's people, and you can't judge them and you can't label them. This is a time of true sounding the alarms about things that are happening in the world. This is the alarm bells going off from the universe to pay attention. This is the alarm bells in your life also, that because there's so many planets retrograde, because there's all this Virgo that could stress us out, and Pisces that can make us feel like there's no way to get through all this, there is. It's one, Pluto and Capricorn, the responsibility that we have to still deal with these situations, systems, bills, all these things in life, and not take crazy paths or do crazy things. But even when it looks like you're not able to make it to the top of the mountain, to pay the bills, to do all the things, to stay in this world and stay alive through it, you've got to. And it's always going to come last second, last minute. There's a lot of delays, tons of retrogrades, and a full moon on Saturn. And this is the second full moon. We're in the middle of a Venus retrograde that's happened on both of them. And this Venus retrograde in Leo is that only light. And that's why if you look at the thumbnail for this, it's about Venus, right? The kiss, the happiness. But those are soldiers with Jupiter that's going to station retrograde here after this full moon. The story that, well, that's not really the story that I wanted. I wanted the kiss, or I wanted the happiness and the love. But there's a lot of people getting ready to go into other worlds that haven't been paying attention. You're going to start to see doorways open here of like, where you wish you could have said something to other people and so forth, where how did you get trapped into that? I wish I would have said something, but you got to remember, like, people have their own destiny to go through certain things in life. And so this is going to be a very intense full moon where, one, we have to let go of the past of what we created in our fantasies about what reality is. So that opens the door to everything under the sun that's new, and also connecting the dots. But when you try to connect the historical to this, yeah, there's a lot of it. But what's different is on every Venus direct at 12 degrees of Leo in this last 1,000 years, and even if you go back to where it might not have been direct at 12 degrees, but you go back to the Venus retrogrades through, let's say, the beginning of, they say it's the beginning of Christ, to now. So that first 1,000 years, you've never seen it with all these planets retrograde. So this is us going into, one, the markers of some of the biggest historical moments in life and transition of the world, including, most people think of the New World as, well, one, Christopher Columbus tried to call it that, but really it was the Spanish takeover of the Mayans and over of that, all that Mayan and Aztec culture that created the quote unquote New World, the New Spain. And they did it for gold. They did it for all these other reasons. And I'm just warning people that we are at that moment now where invasions happen, black swan events, financial. It's Jupiter, Uranus, when Jupiter stations retrograde after this full moon. And so this is us spiritually preparing, not being afraid, knowing that we're going to get through this, and it's only in the moment. It's also about putting massive faith into the divine, but also not blocking yourself by getting into dogmas that really don't take you anywhere. With Pisces, it's an everlasting divine that goes so far that it continues to go far. It doesn't stop at some pearly gate. It doesn't stop at some idolized human being. We need a big reality check. And unfortunately, that reality check's coming here. And what it's doing is it's looking at, when we think of Pluto and Capricorn and all these systems, they're all based upon systems that have been for conquest over in the name of God, and how many people have died for it, how many indigenous tribes have died for it, how many amazing spiritual civilizations have died because of some ideology and some sort of religion. And we've seen that on a lot of the religious sides, but not the spiritual indigenous people. And you got to look at it now like, not only did we see a split in 2020 that I predicted in 2019 with the collective, whether it's COVID or non-COVID or freedom or people who love tyranny, which is crazy, but that already was crazy enough. But this is splitting way farther. Now this is splitting on the true people who follow spirituality, that are willing to see through everything and are willing to be open and see that this is a huge purification of really dirty and dark systems that really have been based upon what you would not expect, but have been based upon the same religion that people love so much, and the religions around the world that people love so much, that really have the darkest past, have the darkest and hidden agendas. This is also North Node and Eris that are conjuncting, so you have to remember at the same time too, that's the feminine goddess of war and strife. And more importantly, there is an event like a black swan coming in, because that does bring in that Trojan horse vibe that she brings. Right? So you got to be careful of what they're doing about COVID stuff, what they're doing about the war stuff, and especially the financial aspect of things. You got to look at your relationships, your job, and everything that is physical in your life that you connect with, to make sure that it is actually in full happiness and is not connected with tyrannical thinking or dogmatic thinking or radicalized religious aspects. And especially even on the other side of that, those kind of fanatical aspects about, well, it's fine, even though I know they don't really go for freedom, and they're going to make me wear a mask again, or they're going to make me do this, because you're not seeing that it's not about that. It's more about whether you're going to get in line, in step, in boots, combat. All these kind of things that are the only way for that economy that they want to save to move forward. Also, invasions that we don't know about that have been happening. I just said it on Deep Astrology, but it's really weird because it just happened. As you're probably going to watch this video, it'll be like hours after, but this is the 8th country in Africa that has done a coup. Another African country, 8 countries, that the military's taken over and taken out the corrupt governments. So there's a revolution happening in Africa right now. And we're getting very close to, well, we're already here. This weekend's the end of what we all knew. And I just have to be that person that lets people know. I have always been that person. I'm not afraid to say it. And I think that it's very important to know this, because what's up ahead is very hard to see at this moment. But it's easy to see and feel what's starting to come in, which we've all been feeling for 3.5 years. That we are all going to have to face this very weird and very twisted, energy that blends itself, hides itself as looking good to so many. And especially with the South Node and Mars there, the understanding of some sort of leadership for peace and so forth by using some sort of the opposite of what that is, and is more of a Trojan horse. I wouldn't be surprised, especially of changing of political figures, whether that's in Ukraine, whether that's in the United States, or whether we already just saw it happen in Africa. As I was doing it, I didn't even know that was happening, right? So it's going to get much more intense. The Florida storm is going to be intense through Atlanta and so forth. I would not, and then with the diesel and the gas situation there, I'm sorry to say, but this shit was all planned. And Florida happens to be a very Jupiterian, Neptune area, and this is Pisces, this full moon, and this is all mutable, and it's crazy there. And, a lot of the cities, Jupiter, Florida, Neptune, Florida, Juno, Florida, like it's all based off that Jupiterian, Neptunian, Pisces vibe. And it's very Virgo-esque too in that chart. It's even run by a Virgo governor and the relationship that he has with that state. So I'd be on red alert if I'm in that area right now. And again, we thought Maui was crazy and that was atrocity and horrible. that we still don't understand. We're going to understand more about that when we see what's going to happen over these next couple of days with the storm. And we're going to see more than we've ever even dreamed possible by the time when this Venus-Jupiter square switches gears and the lower benefic and the higher benefic switch, and Jupiter pulls all the air out of the room when it retrogrades with Uranus for a lesson and a message with that Mercury that's starting to trine over to that Jupiter during this full moon. That's also at the same time like going to give us a message at the last millisecond before Jupiter stations retrograde, while Venus is just stationing direct, and it's going to be the bow shot heard round world. Wouldn't be surprised if something to deal with the Navy at the same time too. This is definitely going to be military, financial, black swan events with government leadership, more of the COVID, the real plague, which has to do with, we already know, the shadow reality, which I told you about. The one thing that they told you that you would never get is quite the thing that actually causes the plague itself. And I know that that's a lot to take in, but I'm not going to lie to you, because when you have all these planets retrograde and there's more coming, and you're in this full moon on Saturn, the second full moon in Pisces, and Neptune's here, it's the thing that, you don't want to see. It's the thing that you keep pushing down. It's the thing that you keep suppressing. It's the thing that the governments keep suppressing. It's the thing that the people keep suppressing because they don't want to admit it. And that purification moment is here with this full moon. And this is not a time to think, not to be scared, right? You don't need to be scared. You just need to be aware that, in the moment, this is about being a minute man, a minute woman. In the minute, you'll figure it out. Not in the hour, not in the day, in the minute that it happens. Stay in the moment and reflect and let go of your attachment that's trying to hold on to the last planks of this ship. But at the same time, you've got to still play by the rules that are there, even though we don't like them or agree with them. Pluto and Capricorn's really seeing who's going to make it to the top of this mountain, know how to play this game, because you don't want to be swept up. The people who are not going to pay their bills or not going to, even when it comes to the fucking line, you're like, you can't quit right now in your life. It's going to be very easy by what's going to come up over this next week after this full moon's triggering that I just want to quit. I don't have to work anymore. I don't need to do this anymore. That's the easiest people they're going to be scooping up. And remember, all September, except for just Mercury that will come direct, everything else is retrograde as we wait for Saturn and Pluto. And as we come into the eclipses on October 14th, the beginning of those, in Libra, South Node, in the South. We are very much in square Pluto, and all these major things have all finally arrived on this full moon. And it's even more auspicious to me that they're arriving at the moments of the two benefics in square that are going to switch on within the same day. And if you look at all the history, whether it's the Last Crusade, literally, the craziness of Spain going in to kill all the Aztecs and take it over, the same way that we saw Martin Luther get excommunicated, heresy, people starting to be hung for wanting to have beliefs outside the Catholic Church. Knights Templar, who in that last crusade decided, no, we're not going to do this anymore, and ended up, they got killed. We're going to all have to stand up against massive systems that are all connected to all the religions and the main religious institutions in the world. And Constantinople falling through the plague of 541 through this same transit of Venus retrograde that came direct with Jupiter and Taurus, Pluto and Capricorn, Neptune and Pisces. And that Justinian plague was the end of Constantinople. And following that, they didn't have anywhere to go for 100 years until they reappeared in 800 with Charlemagne and so forth. So we are really at a pivotal moment here. You are going to start to see the Pope being a big situation because these transits now, this full moon has activated massive Pope transit aspects, world leaders, war, and more importantly, whether or not you're going to be one of those people that fall into their horrible plan that's based off this look for peace and climate change and all these other things. That's nothing compared to what really it was all about. They're really trying to get you in the trap of the religious wars that are going to come, and the revolutions of people that really can see through and are not doing it because of some crazy ideologies that are based upon made-up characters and so forth that have never really won. They've always lost if you do the history, and this is what it exposes. And we're in for a global moment in the next week that will never be forgotten. And I'm preparing you right now. And the only way to really tell you all this astrologically with this full moon is to release your sensitivity about it, because that's the connection to this programmed ideology that you're not, anytime that you're going to try and pierce through the veil to a higher frequency or go anywhere, comes all these religious or programmed in the reality through school and through the media and all these things on your TikTok, to all these things, and this program that's wrong to think that, or all these things. When the facts, and more importantly, the new canvas, and you don't want to be swept up in all this. This is where, in World War II, people who knew to get out of certain countries, they did once it started getting weird. It's not about preparing as much as knowing in the moment. I'm not saying you're going to have to do that right away, but I'm just saying restrictions in monetary policy are coming, as far as like what we saw in 1933. There's too many aspects also at the same time that are bringing up crashes, black swan events that cause these things. So this is all the triggering full moon that might not feel like it right away because of Jupiter station and Venus station, that we will see by this weekend, and especially Monday, be the beginning of the news of Eris herself and her Trojan horse coming into this reality and piercing through. And I am putting out that warning that this is not your traditional, well, you don't watch 1980s horoscopes on the Leo King and highvibe.tv. And this is where, as a light worker, you don't fall for any of this crap. You don't get lost in any of this crap. And you can avoid a lot of this crap by being aware and not being freaked out. But also, how have we gone for this long over the last 251 years to where people have really bought this fake reality that really has been a program, and what is right and what is wrong and what is righteous, because all those righteous people that are so righteous are the darkest people that are forcing, mandating, and creating strife, and more importantly, killing so many people in wars and trying to involve the whole entire world and universe. And I hope I am wrong. Let's take a look at this card, see what pops up. And, if you want to hear more, go to highvibe.tv, become a member, even if it's a basic member, and watch Deep Astrology, where I spent 2.5 hours and go through the history and go through the actual charts of all those dates I talked about and how the connection, and it will blow your mind. Or you can also watch Retrograde City, where I spent 3.5 hours going through all the way up until the end of these eclipses about how this is the end of the world we knew. So this is the beginning of a 500-year world that is closing right now. And even in your own life, the way that we're going to live our lives starting in 2024 and forward will never be the way it was in the past and the way it has been either. So, pretty gnarly, but it's going to be us that doesn't fall into these failed attempts that look good, too good to be true, or look victorious when really they're not. And I don't believe that there is no better side on Ukraine and Russia. I think both of them are in on it. I think Zelensky is a Russian KGB agent that he installed, and they're all in on it. So I don't think that Russia's right. I don't think Ukraine's right. I don't think America's right. I don't think that NATO's right. I don't think any of them are right. I think that they all are in on it. They've all been taken over by some other force, which that force is bringing in their mothership this week. So it's going to take all us light workers to, it's not that you have to do some crazy thing. It's more about what we do in the moment, know what to do. There's light code workers out there. There are people that know how to channel to help others. There are people that do amazing astrology, tarot. There are people that do Reiki healing in these times. This is going to activate solar flare activity in the massive, from this full moon all the way to these crazy aspects, especially helio-wise. Mercury, Saturn come together on the 3rd when we see Venus station direct and Jupiter station retrograde on the 4th. And we also see Venus, Neptune in helio. We see some very, very gnarly aspects from Venus, Neptune in Ceci quadrant over to Mars. And then we also see a quincunx from Mars over to, oh no, it's the Ceci quadrant from Mars in Helio and Libra at 19 over to what's happening at 4 degrees of Saturn and Mercury conjuncting. And then it's the quincunx. It's one of those. Oh yeah. It's, I'd have to look at it, but put it this way. Helio-wise, it's all hitting the same way. Some of the weirdest angles you've ever seen with the quintile to the Ceci quadrant to an in conjunction that we're seeing in the helio, but also in the geo, and with Venus being one and Mars being in the helio. It's just, there's too many things here that have been predestined for way too long, and honestly, the things that come from it, I referenced it, the Game of Thrones, where the White Walkers come to the gates of Winterfell and cross in. That's what this full moon is. A couple have got through little ways, but this is where that hardcore mothership army has approached the ice wall, and you can feel it. All right, I don't know how else to better else describe it. Or a never-ending story. This is where the nothingness is encircling the heart of the castle with the princess, like, and Rufio, or not Rufio, but Atreyu, and all the way that whole story works, and the oracles, and we're at those times, and you can't be just stuck in the matrix, just sitting on your ass and wondering, what am I going to do? It's more about what aren't you doing with the stuff you already have within you, that you are already embedded with. Stop looking outside. Start doing stuff from what's within. Chariot reversed. Yeah, so, unfortunately, I love this card. This is my favorite card in the whole deck. But, when I see it reversed here, it's like we're not going in the direction that we want at this moment. There's still more for us to figure out in this town, in this city, that we want to know. So there's like this idea of trying to keep figuring things out. And I think that might be the problem. We won't really move spiritually anywhere when we're trying to figure things out too much. I feel like people are going to be overwhelmed with trying to figure it out. What's the problem? How do I fix this problem? And then, we can lose hope. It's not until we reach the chariot, when we leave, let go of the city and move into the divine fully, with the magician wands following the crescent moons, following the star that's awesome, that's guiding us above, following the divine spirit. But, this problem here is that it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere when it really is. You don't need to keep waiting for, when is God going to show up? When is the universe going to show up? Like, it's what you already have, and figuring that out and getting on that chariot to go to do that awesome place. And we got the 5 of Swords. So, yeah, this is people going to be trying to force their way into figuring things out too much and pushing too hard and trying to, push through. And it's quite the opposite. It's quite about reflection, understanding. Yes, we got sensitivities, but this is about also letting go of those. This is about this Saturn energy, understanding the forces that are coming and the intuition that we're feeling of this weird shit coming in, and that we're not going to fall for all these crazy stories and all these crazy things that are coming at us. They're about to push a crazier, especially media, Neptune, Pisces, way than you've ever seen. And we will be dealing with more censorship. We will be dealing with more tightening in every way, especially financially and so forth, for them to try and squeeze people and see who's going to buckle. And this is where you don't buckle. This is where you do not give up. This is where you do not bow down. This is where you're not afraid. And anybody who's going to say, I'm worried about my life, or I'm worried about this, or I'm worried about, you know what? You don't have courage. The light only wins through all of us standing up in our courage of what's righteous from a spiritual standpoint, and not from like an ideology of a religion or anything. We just do what's good for humanity. We do what's good for the heart from love. And we don't stand down from things that are trying to take that away from our collective and our brothers and sisters. Period. That's it. Not getting locked into, religious ideology, saviors, all these kind of crazy things. That this can really start having people start looking to that, and especially the way that we're going to start to see them impose some sort of visionary experience, sacrifice, North Node, Chiron, Eris, moon crossing over after this full moon. Like, I'm telling you, be on 100% red alert. And when I told you all this shit, that it would be January 12th, 2020, and that whole eclipse time period, I'm telling you, everything I just told you is all already been at critical mass, and now we're seeing the sequence of events start to just. So don't be afraid, and stay true to yourself and your soul, and you'll be fine. But don't start altering your soul to the fake reality. That's what they really want. Make sure that you follow me on High Vibe TV. Be a member. You can definitely start watching the best spiritual content you'll find anywhere, especially guidance every day, awesome shows, and awesome schools, and ways to participate in the community. We appreciate it very much, and I'll see you on the next one.
Okay. Monster.